Texas Congressman Ted Poe is a Republican. He has left the Freedom Caucus because of the failure of the health care bill Friday. Here's what he said on Fox and Friends earlier this morning. Roll tape.
We spent an hour and a half with the President of the United States, with the Vice President, members of the Cabinet, and talking about trying to make this bill better. Changes were made, and at the end of the day, it still was a no, and I think that was improper to continue to vote no. Sometimes you got to say yes, and this was the time to repeal Obamacare.
Sometimes you've got to say yes. Joining us now, David Webb. David, I hope that Ted Poe and what he did is a sign of things to come. What do you say?
I think with the arm twisting in D.C., it possibly is for some of the Freedom Caucus members. I'll say this, Stu, and I'm going to go back for a moment. Foresight is the wisdom to learn from hindsight. Hindsight is what President Reagan said. If you don't care about who gets the credit, you can move the ball on things. And both moderates and conservatives in D.C. have failed to move the ball on Obamacare, repeal, replace, whatever form. So the American people are still losing, and this goes to bringing down, you know, the Democrats are obstructing, but in a way the Republicans have now propped up. I don't care. I'm sick of who gets blame or credit. That's what they've been doing all weekend. The fact is the American people are paying the price for their failure, and Obamacare is still in place.
Well, you've got to hope that they learn from this failure. Regardless of who gets the blame for Friday's failure, they've got to learn from it. They've got to be the party that governs.
Look, extremes don't work in Washington. That is the reality. You're not going to get your 100%. You're not going to get your 100% on both sides of this or any side of this. You find a way to move the ball forward, and then you work on the things. These are incremental fixes. Don't be like Democrats where you expect one bill to fix it all. It won't. Okay. And turn around and say, how do we fix as much of it as possible and combine it with other things like tax reform? And by the way, to President Trump, go hard on tax reform. Don't let up. Put your foot down on the gas and ram this thing through the wall.
Okay, now listen to this. Strong words from President Trump on the failure of the health care bill. Roll that tape.
I've been saying for the last year and a half that the best thing we can do, politically speaking, is let Obamacare explode. It is exploding right now.
Let it explode. It is exploding right now. Okay, I understand that. Who gets the blame when it does explode? I suggest it's going to be the Republicans because they failed to reform it.
Look, the Democrats will rewrite to the history of now, which is this is your fault because you're in power. It's wrong, but it's how they're going to write it to the public, and they'll likely be effective. To the Republicans in these not safe districts, you will get the blame because they will be effective in turning it against you. Now, let me say this, and a little advice. To the moderates and the conservatives. Conservatives, go to work with the moderates when you get repeal through or whatever you need to do on tax policy and help them. To the conservatives, you know, flip it around. If you don't work together and support each other, you will end up losing a lot of seats in the House. That balance could become very close. And if you lose, if you don't win, you don't make policy.
Okay, well, hold on a second. Back off for just 1 second. What does it look like? What does our healthcare system look like later this year when, if the president is right, Obamacare implodes, explodes, whichever it is?
Millions of Americans will pay the price or actually be unable to pay the price and these subsidized costs, and that will hurt our economy.
Well,
and that's exactly where it's going to come down to business, hiring, jobs, and the economy.
But will it be so bad that the Republicans go back to the drawing board and say, we got to do something, and we will do something?
I think they will if it ever got that bad out of desperation, because at that point they have less to lose and more to gain. And you know what? Politicians are risk averse. They claim, they get out in front of the cameras, they say whatever feels good to their base, but they're usually afraid, many of them, to go back in there and say, I'm going to go face my constituents and tell them this is the best we can do. We've got to move forward. This litmus test stuff on both sides, not going to work, because what do we have today? We have Obamacare on Monday.
Exactly. We've got Obamacare and all its faults still with us as far as the eye can see. David, I'm going to try to calm down. I think you should too. There you go.
Right.
There you go.
Breathe.
I'm down to 160 over 110 on my blood pressure, which is manageable.
I'm not even close yet.
Okay.